Good morning, all of you. We have started the poem Dover Beach by Matthew Arnold in a previous class. We discussed its background, its theme, and central idea. But we did not go for the line by line explanation in the previous class. As I told you, before we just go on deciphering the meaning of each lines, we need to know the theme and background. Otherwise, it's impossible to understand the tone of the poem. So hopefully you have gone through that, and in this class we will be just proceeding with the poem. So have the poem opened in front of you. Those who don't have, they can avail this from the study material section. So let us begin with the poem. We will start with the first stanza. The sea is calm and calm tonight, though the sea is calm, peaceful, and without turbulence tonight. The tide is full. The tide is in its full state. The moon lies fair upon the straits. The light of the moon is getting reflected on the sea. Now, strait is what? Strait is it is connecting two water bodies. Here it is connecting England and France. Okay, it's a narrow water body. On the French coast, and light gleams and is gone. So French coast, the shore of the France, gleams and is gone. Now gleams and is gone means what? Now the light of the French coast, once it was firm and bright, now it's flickering and it is going back. The cliffs of England stand. The cliffs of England is seen visible, glimmering and vast. Here it is a reference of the enormous sparkling white cliffs of England out in the tranquil bay. That is, out in the tranquil bay. Come to the window, sweet is the night air. The poet addresses his beloved to come to the window, and he expresses how pleasant the night scenario is. Where the sea meets the moon, only from the long line of spray, the large waves and the white froth are making here the horizontal line. Okay. Where the sea meets the moon-blanched sea. Here the land seems to meet. The land is here talked about moon-blanched. Why moon-blanched? With the help of the bright moonlight, it looks like very pale and whitish. So here it meets the waves. Listen, you hear the grating roar. Now here is a reference to the roar-like sound of rocks being pulled by the waves, or pebbles which the waves draw back and fling. The pebbles which are being thrown back by the waves, and it is creating a sound of roar. At their turn up the high strand, at their return up the high strand, up the strand means the beach, begin and cease and then again begin. So it is a reference to the endless motion of the waves with tremulous cadence slow, the quavering sound, or it is referring a sound of a sob, the eternal note of sadness in, the everlasting note of sadness that is trembling, that is being produced by the trembling sound. The line symbolizes here grief and permanent misery. Okay, so what we got to know, the poem opens with a tranquil note, vividly describing the natural beauty in front of the poet. He is at Dover right now along with his beloved. The faint moonlight is flooding the whole land and it looks so beautiful. The light of the French coast is flickering unsteadily. sometimes brightly visible and sometimes it's gone. The cliffs of England stand very firmly, glimmering the moonlight, extending up to the calm strait. The poet calls his beloved to come to the window and asks her to enjoy the beauty. The long line of the spray refers to the horizontal line on the beach that is created by the foamy and frothy waves. The land looks pale at the touch of the moonlight, and the whole landscape effuses the note of sadness. He asks his beloved to listen to the harsh noise being produced by the pebbles being thrown away by the waves. So the quavering sound is suggesting here the sound of a sob. It is bearing the eternal note of sadness, which is the permanent human grief and misery. And it makes the poet conscious of the universal suffering that all are born to experience. The last line of the stanza is mainly very important, which removes the phrase, which shows the phrase here, that is the eternal note of sadness. So you can understand, we have seen the poet is there at the window enjoying the beauty of Dover along with his beloved. So it is divided in two stages. If you can see, the stanza is divided in its way. First we have seen the beauty was so natural and peaceful and tranquil, and then we got to see suddenly the noise created by the pebbles which are being thrown away by the waves, that is creating a sound of moan, and that makes the poet aware of the fact that we all are human beings, and this misery and sadness are bound to be experienced by all the human beings. Next stanza. Sophocles long ago. Sophocles is whom? The famous dramatist of 5th century BC. He was known for his play Oedipus Rex and Antigone. Heard it on Aegean Sea and it brought. Now he heard it on the Aegean Sea. Now it's Mediterranean Sea. Okay. Now this Aegean Sea separates Greece and Turkey. And it brought into his mind the turbid ebb and flow. Turbid means the cloudy or muddy. Ebb and flow is the high and low, tide. It is It is a figure of speech named symbolism. It symbolizes here the human misery, and metaphor also human turbid ebb and flow, because the turbid ebb, the high and low flow of the water is being compared to the misery and the plight of the human beings. Of human misery we find also in the sound a thought, hearing it by the distant northern sea. So here we have seen the insistent sad song of the sea waves have been singing since the time immemorial, right? It was actually heard by the famous Greek dramatist Sophocles a long time back, and Arnold here also listens to the same sound. Sophocles has written about his experience in the tragedy named Antigone. He expressed his thought of human misery. Long ago he listened to the sound of the sea waves on the Aegean island in Greece, which reminded him of the distress and despair prevailing in the human life. Arnold hears the same sound. Now in this stanza we will get to know whether it's Arnold or Sophocles. Both belong to the different times, different eras, but they witnessed the same sound of distress. Third stanza. The sea of faith. Now, sea of faith, it's a metaphor. Metaphorically, it refers to the widespread religious faith and devotion. Once too at the full and round earth's shore. Once it was full and seems to cover or round the earth's shore. So now you can understand the poet was metaphorically referring that the human faith was once widespread the shore and it seems to cover the whole earth. Lay like the folds of a bright girdle fold. Now lay like, it is a simile, as you know, with the word like we can identify that. The sea of faith is compared to the folds of bright girdle. Girdle is, it is a jewelry owned, a belt like jewelry owned by the women on their waist. Now it looks like a girdle rolled. But now I only hear its melancholy long withdrawing roar. Now it's melancholy and the poet can hear its melancholy long and withdrawing roar. Withdrawing means the retreating roar. Retreating to the breath. Now retreating is what? Retreating is the process of receding, the process of receding the waves back. So it is also a metaphor because the sea of faith is compared here with the receding of the waves. So the sea of faith, once it was in its full form, now it is receding back or retreating back. Of the night wind down the vast edges drear. So vast edges drear means the hollow that is present there at the central of the sea. When the full waves are receding back, it is clearly visible. So now you can understand when the sea of faith actually covered the whole land with its waves, with its belief, it looks quite beautiful. Now when it is receding back, it is retreating. The hollow, the dark, the dark inner corner of the sea is being exposed to the reader, to the audience, to the whole world. And naked shingles of the world. Now naked shingles means what? Here the pebbles are left by the sea waves, and without the waves the pebbles looked naked and without cover. It is here compared to the human beliefs, which was once covered by the religious faith, but now it is naked, it is uncovered, and utter confusion is seen prevailing the whole world. And we can say that the art is robbed of its beauty and vigor. So as we can see, this third stanza introduces the central idea. Here he compares the deep religious faith of a man to the vast stretching sea. Once it was full and it was full and it is complete flow, and now it is ebbing. So we can see the hollow and the holes are being exposed, and without the belief the human beings are suffering of confusion, or they cannot understand things. They are in utter darkness, or devoid of beliefs. Last stanza. Our love, let us be true. Now the poet is exclamation. It is a note of exclamation that he is using out of grief and tenderness to his beloved. Now let us be true to one another. So now he is asking his beloved to be truthful to each other. For the world which seems to lie before us a land of dreams. Lie before like a land of dreams, it is simile. So here the world is compared to the land of dreams. So various, so beautiful, so new. See, he is saying the world lying before us is looking like a dream, a dreamland. It is so beautiful, so various, so new. Hath really neither joy, which in reality has no joy, nor love, nor light, nor certitude, nor peace, nor help for pain. So it is, as we can see, the usage of so, the repetition of so, thrice and repetition of nor many a times here. It is called a figure of speech named anaphora. So the poet is saying that even if it looks beautiful in our in our naked eyes, in reality it is not like that. It is devoid of certitude, means certainty. It is devoid of love, help for pain. So it has nothing, and we are here on a darkling plain. Now previously he said they are there on a land of dreams. Now he is saying that we are here on a darkling plain. It's on a dark land, swept with confused alarms of struggle and flight, where ignorant armies clash by night. Now he is saying that the inhabitants of earth, they are fighting like armies with each other in the in the dark and desolate night, and they cannot see each other. They do not know why are they fighting for, whom are they fighting with, whether they are friends or foe. They do not know, but they are fighting. See, so without this faith, when the faith is removed, we all are in a pitiful and miserable condition, and there is total darkness. They are bewildered and do not know why are they killing their friends. So in such a poor and terrible condition, the poet is asking his beloved to be truthful to each other at least, because otherwise they cannot have solace. They cannot help each other in the situation of confusion and pandemonium without being truthful and without being faithful to each other. Okay, so the poem ends here, consisting 4 stanzas. If you read the background and the theme, you will have no difficulty, and I have tried my best to explain the lines. If I am unable, you can go to the study material section where you will have the explanation, so you can read from there as well. So please do read. In the next class we will be going for revision test, and I will tell you about the question pattern, how may the questions come. So get ready for the unit test. So first, today's task will be just read the poem, decipher the meaning and the symbolism, and then I have given 3 question answers in the worksheet section. You just go there and please read those are very important, and without those 3 I think if anything comes, you will be able to answer. Those 3 are mainly very important and very essential for you to know. And in the next class we will be going for a revision test. I'll tell you about the question pattern and everything. So until then, you just keep enjoying with your study, and we'll meet in the next class. Okay, have a great day ahead. Thank you for being so patient.